Think DC is dead in August? Well, think again. All of your out-of-town friends going to Paris for the summer are going to have major FOMO because Chevy Chase Main Street is throwing the party of the summer. Join District Bridges August 16th for Sips and Snacks, Last Sip Standing, a neighborhood food and drink crawl featuring 5 Chevy Chase favorites like Little Beast and Opal. $40 gets you live music, a free drink, and snacks at every stop. To learn more and get your tickets, head to districtbridges.org/events.
Remember that amazing cafe you discovered last summer or that perfect hiking spot you heard about? With the Overlook mobile app, you can create personalized lists of places you've been and want to go and always see everything on a map. Share your favorite hidden gems with family and friends or keep your secret spots private for you. The best part, there are no ads cluttering your list and no one is selling your interest to travel data. Download the free app at overlookmaps.com and check out overlookmaps.com/DC to see some CityCast lists. On a map and in your pocket. Overlookmaps.com, collect and share the places that matter to you.
Today on CityCast DC. Virginia's governor's race is one of the most closely watched, not to mention one of the most expensive in the country. With political groups pouring money in, it's more than just a state election. It's widely seen as a referendum on the party in power and a bellwether for the national political mood. And it's not just the race for governor. Every seat in Virginia is on the ballot in November. Michael Pope, reporter for Virginia Public Radio and host of the Virginia Press Room podcast, joins us to break down what's at stake. Today's Wednesday, August 6th. I'm Bridget Todd, and here's what DC is talking about. Michael, thank you so much for being here.
It's great to be back.
So I live in DC, but I grew up in Virginia, so I try to keep one foot in both camps of what's going on in the district and in Virginia. And so for folks who do not do that, who maybe don't know what's going on with Virginia's government, it's a lot going on because every single seat in the Virginia legislature is up for re-election. How big of a deal is this?
It's a huge deal. I know a lot of your listeners probably have election fatigue. Just last year, we had this big election, and now we're going to have another one. I'm sure it strikes a lot of your listeners as very strange to have this tradition of odd year elections. The tradition actually dates back to the 1850s, so it's a very old tradition of having odd year elections. And in recent years, it's really been seen, it's viewed as a bellwether. So this is a statewide race with 3 statewide elections on the ballot, plus all 100 House of Delegate seats. So it's a fairly large scale election, including 3 statewide seats. So it really gives you a sense of kind of where things are headed. And so as a result of that, a lot of people look to Virginia and to a lesser extent, New Jersey to get a sense of kind of where things are headed.
Well, in that vein, let's talk a little bit about Glenn Youngkin. What is the current governor's relationship with DC?
Strained. Youngkin has always tried to straddle this line of being Trumpy, but not too Trumpy, and MAGA, but not too MAGA. And he obviously wants to be a Trump supporter. He does not want to fall on the bad side of Donald Trump. And yet, at the same time, he's in a state with a bunch of federal employees. And so he's trying to be on both sides of that issue, or at least trying not to make too many enemies along the way.
In some ways, I almost feel like it would be better for him if he just stopped trying to straddle the fence and walk the line, just committed to one or the other. I think that's where he's falling into trouble, is doing exactly what you just described, trying to not piss off too many people on either camp.
Well, politics is often a game of addition, and I think he doesn't want to be in a position where he's losing potential supporters. He wants to gain potential supporters. He doesn't want to lose any of the MAGA people, and he also doesn't want to lose any of the more traditional mainstream Republican support. And so I think that's the reasoning behind him trying to straddle this line.
A lot of my friends who live in Virginia still say things like, oh, because he's term limited, he's not governing, like he's governing in a way where he has a sense that it doesn't matter to Virginians, like how they feel about what he's doing now. Is there any truth to that?
You have to also temper that with the expectation that he wants to move on to something else, right? So it is true that he was a lame duck from the day that he was inaugurated. All Virginia governors are lame ducks on day one. However, he wants to have a future in politics. And so it's not like he is just going to do crazy things. He wants to make sure everything that he does is calculated to improve his standing in the Republican Party.
Is he popular in Virginia?
Very popular among Republicans. As a matter of fact, there is this gubernatorial election going on right now, statewide gubernatorial election, and he's not part of that campaign. I mean, he's made endorsements and he appears on the campaign trail, but he's not on the ballot. And a lot of Republicans are kind of wishing they had some Youngkin magic at the top of the ticket versus what they've got.
Let's talk about that. So who is running for governor to replace Youngkin?
The Lieutenant Governor Winsome Earl Sears is the Republican nominee, Black woman. She would be the first Black woman governor. She actually is from Jamaica, so she has a really interesting backstory in her own right. And so she has been struggling in this campaign. Her poll numbers are down. Her fundraising numbers are down. There are a lot of Republicans who are very anxious about her performance at the top of the ticket. And, it seems like a lot of the money, a lot of the Washington establishment money is going to the attorney general candidate rather than at the top of the ticket. So that really tells you something about where Republicans are right now.
Yeah, for folks who have not checked in with her or seen her speak, it's not surprising to hear that a lot of the money is not going to that race, given, I think, sometimes the way that she comes off in a lot of her interviews and public appearances.
Yeah, I would say also you want to keep in mind that there has been a little bit of an inconsistency. We saw over the weekend she had this clash with the CNN anchor, and that's not really her style. I think she's found herself at a point where she needs to do something. Like the status quo is not working, and she's got people telling her all kinds of things, I'm sure. And so over the weekend, we saw her clash with the folks at CNN in a way that it was not really her style, has not been her style lately, at least. And so I think she's trying to figure out what kind of lane is going to be successful for her.
That's so interesting because it almost sounds like similar to what you were just describing with Youngkin, of having to figure out where it is exactly I belong, what kind of public positioning I should be taking, what people are going to want from me. I feel like that's almost similar to what you just described.
Yeah, again, the position that we have found ourselves in is she's running for governor. She's at the top of the ticket, and yet she's way behind in fundraising. She's way behind in the polls. The Republicans have shown a willingness to abandon her campaign and put all their money in the campaign of the Republican Attorney General Jason Miyares, who it seems like, just looking at the numbers here, it seems like Republicans feel way better about the chances of incumbent Republican Attorney General Jason Miyares being reelected than they are Lieutenant Governor Winsome Earl Sears being elected to the governor.
Why do you think that is?
Okay, so traditionally, Virginia has a reputation of responding to the presidential election. So usually what happens is whatever happens with the presidential election, Virginia goes in the opposite direction. There's only one recent example of that happening, and that's after Obama's reelection. McAuliffe was elected governor. That's the outlier. Usually what happens is the presidential election goes for Biden, but Virginia goes for Youngkin. So it's usually like a zigzag kind of a thing. So Republicans are facing headwinds just looking at the traditional model here, we are expecting Virginia, the expectation is Virginia would go the opposite direction of the presidential election last year. That's a pretty strong historical precedent that Republicans have to face in this upcoming election. And then, Youngkin was really good on the stump. If you've ever seen him work a room, you see the level. He's at a different level. He really connects with audiences in a way that we have yet to see from Winsome Earl Sears.
Hey, when someone else's negligence changes your life forever, figuring out what to do next can feel overwhelming. You need lawyers who won't back down. The NACE Law Group has been winning serious injury and wrongful death cases in D.C. for decades. They don't just settle, they fight for real justice, and they're not afraid to take cases to court to get it. You might remember them as Paulson and Nace. It's the same trusted lawyers, just a new name. If you need someone in your corner, reach out to NACE Law Group for a free no-obligation consultation. Visit WashingtonDCInjuryLawyers.com or call 202-463-1999. That's 202-463-1999.
Hold up, DC foodies. You're still ordering the same boring takeout? It is time to wake up those taste buds and explore DC's unique and delicious food scene. Metropolitan Washington Restaurant Week is bringing the eats from August 18th through the 24th at hundreds of locations across the DMV. Check out that new Thai fusion spot or that burger joint you've been meaning to try. There's something for everyone. Enjoy a 3-course lunch, dinner, or DC's favorite, brunch, at a discounted flat rate as low as $25. If you've ever eaten out in DC, you already know that it's an absolute steal. Many locations are also offering cocktail and wine pairings to further elevate your dining experience. Restaurant Week is presented by the Restaurant Association of Metropolitan Washington and Events DC. Visit rwdmv.com to see the full list of participating restaurants, peruse the menus, and book your reservations. You were speaking about Virginia being this sort of national bellwether. Is that why there's so much money poured into Virginia elections?
Yeah, but I get the sense that there probably would be a lot of money poured into a Virginia re-elections, even if it wasn't a bellwether. But that doesn't hurt. I mean, you got interest groups all over the country who want that early hit to say, we are successful because just look at Virginia. And so I think not only is it a bellwether, it's viewed as a bellwether, but that phenomenon does, in fact, attract a lot of campaign cash.
Down ballot, what should we be looking out for, especially when it comes to Northern Virginia?
Let's not forget, before we get too far down the ballot, there are 3 statewide races. There's the governor, lieutenant governor, and attorney general. So the lieutenant governor's race is Ghazala Hashmi, who is a Richmond area senator, versus John Reed, who is a former right-wing radio host in Richmond. He's like a Richmond version of Rush Limbaugh. And also openly gay, which has caused some tension because Winsome Earl Sears is pretty evangelical, very Christian. She's not necessarily down with being on the ticket with a gay guy, and that's caused some tension inside the Republican Party. And then let's not forget the race for attorney general, which has actually attracted more money than the campaign for governor. This is really interesting. The last round of campaign finance disclosures showed that the candidate who raised the most amount of money in that time for the campaign finance disclosures was the incumbent Republican attorney general. So it is really interesting. The AG is pulling in more money than anybody else. He is on the ticket for re-election. So the governor cannot be re-elected, but the attorney general can. And so he's running for re-election. And his opponent is former Delegate Jay Jones from the Hampton Roads area. And so the 3 statewide races, and then all 100 seats in the House of Delegates. So that's not 100 competitive races, but it is like a dozen or so competitive races. The Democratic Speaker, Don Scott, is targeting 14 Republican-held seats that he wants to flip. 14 seats. And some of those competitive seats are in the Northern Virginia area. So if we look at Fredericksburg, we got incumbent delegate Joshua Cole. He's a Democrat going up against Republican Sean Steinway. Then also in Prince William County, we've got incumbent Democrat delegate Josh Thomas. He's got a Republican opponent, Gregory Lee Gorham. And then Prince William, we've got Elizabeth Guzman is the Democrat who's a former delegate. This is a familiar name to some of your listeners. Former delegate Elizabeth Guzman is the Democrat who is challenging incumbent Republican Ian Lovejoy. Also, there's a race in Loudoun and Fauquier worth following. That is a seat where we've got incumbent Republican delegate Gary Higgins versus Democrat John McAuliffe. And, you know, a lot of the competitive races are elsewhere in the state, in the Richmond area, Hampton Roads, and of course, the South Side. And to a lesser extent, Southwest Virginia is dominated by Republicans, but there is a very competitive seat in the Blacksburg Roanoke area where you'll note that's a college town. So this is a theme actually of the Democrats are targeting seats where the numbers look good for them, but they're also really making an effort this cycle to target races where they've got colleges and universities. So one of the seats is James City County and Williamsburg, where we've got the College of William and Mary. And then, of course, Blacksburg and Roanoke is the home to Virginia Tech. And Fredericksburg has a university. So the Democrats are really making an effort to see if they can get the college kids here to move the needle a little bit.
Why are these races so important?
It's about control and power, right? I mean, there are a lot of issues that are on the ballot. People are going to be making decisions about environmental policy and housing policy. And with the race for attorney general, what's the relationship between Virginia and the federal government? Does Virginia comply with the Trump administration, or does Virginia fight the Trump administration in court? That's the importance of the attorney general's race. And so we got a lot of extremely consequential elections on the ballot this year in Virginia. The Democrats are really hoping this is going to be their year. They're going to get a blue wave. And when they get that blue wave, they will have the trifecta. If this goes the way that they're expecting it to go, they'll have the governor's seat. They'll have the tie-breaking vote in the Senate, which they will need because the Senate is tightly matched and none of those people are on the ballot this year. And so they're going to definitely have ties to break in the Senate. So they'll have a Democrat there in the LG's seat to break the ties. And if they get the sweep, they'll have the attorney general, although that's the most likely seat to go to Republicans. And Democrats do have a majority in the House right now, but it's razor thin. And so they want to expand on their majority. And like I said earlier, Speaker Scott is targeting 14 seats that he wants to flip. And so you asked, like, why is this important? If the Democrats have total control of the governors, all the executive branches, and all the legislative branches, they will be able to push through basically what they want to do, right? One example of this is marijuana legalization. It's been stalled because marijuana is legal, but nobody has a license to sell it because they have not been able to set up the marketplace yet. If the Democrats take control, that's one of the many things that they probably would go after, is creating a marketplace where people can get licenses to sell marijuana.
So here in DC, one of the biggest issues everyone's talking about is what's happening with DOGE and attacks on federal workers and the impacts that's going to have on our local economy. Has that also been an issue that you've seen playing out in Virginia's elections?
Oh, yeah, totally. I mean, the kitchen table issues and the economy are always political hot issues. And in this environment where we've got the economy is obviously in doubt, and we've saw the jobs numbers last week, of course, were so bad that Trump had to fire the person who came out with the numbers.
That's when you know they're bad.
That's when you know they're bad. That's when you know they're bad. And hey, listen, they're only going to get worse because I'm sure your listeners are familiar with the fork in the road people. And so we are in the fall, we are going to get a lot of those people who are currently, we don't have the numbers. We don't have those jobless numbers yet because they haven't formally left yet. But once those fork in the road people formally leave the federal government and they are not employed, we're going to see those jobless numbers, unemployment numbers really spike later this year, just as the election is around the corner.
Ooh, that's going to be some interesting timing. If you had to forecast what you think is going to happen with this election, who's going to win, what it's going to look like, what are your thoughts? What do you think?
Well, I'm not in the game of forecasting, but if you ask the people who are in the game of forecasting, which is to say all of the polling that has been done, it is widely in favor of the Democrats right now. Abigail Spanberger is really leading in the polls right now, and it's not even close. This is why there's so much anxiety among Republicans about the Sears campaign. And so I would imagine the Republicans are trying to figure out anything they can do to change the narrative and change the focus and gain some traction on Spanberger. But right now, the Democrats and Spanberger are leading. So that's at the top of the ticket. And then with those 100 seats, let's not forget, Democrats are currently in control. They're looking to expand their majority. There are some seats Republicans are targeting, but it seems kind of unlikely in this environment that Republicans are going to be able to knock off any of the Democratic incumbent House members that, you know, like they are looking at, for example, Delegate Joshua Cole in Fredericksburg. They would love to unseat him because it's a marginal race. I mean, it's a Democratic seat, but it's almost 50-50. And so that's one of the seats they're looking at. Delegate Michael Fagans in the Virginia Beach area, they're looking at potentially unseating him. Delegate Josh Thomas in the Prince William County. It's a very slightly Democratic seat. It's 1.1 for the Dems. So, Republicans are targeting Josh Cole, Mike Fagans, and Josh Thomas. However, all the dynamics seem to be with the Democrats right now at this stage. It is early, although it's later than you might think because early voting starts in 5 weeks.
Michael, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you.
That's all for today here on CityCast DC. If you enjoyed the show, why not tell a friend, rate the show, leave us a review, and subscribe to our morning newsletter. And become a neighbor. Head to membership.citycast.fm to join. We'll be back tomorrow morning with even more news from around the city. Talk to you then.